to order then. Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir. This is under process, and Nikki's on the line, and Don is on the line. To give you a review of the city audit. So I'm going to really turn this over to Don to walk through the process and answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go through the audit opinions. We got we got 4 audit opinions that we're going to go through. So the first audit opinion is in the financial statements on page 1. And again, my name is Don Haney with Altman Rogers. I was the audit partner on this job. I've been the audit partner on this job for several years now. So on page 1, this is our audit opinion. So we've audited the company financial statements of the governmental activities, business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information. We were not engaged to audit the financial statements of Nome joint utility, and we put an opinion on each opinion unit. So listed below the summary of opinions is each opinion unit, and there we gave an unmodified opinion on every opinion unit except the aggregate discretely presented component units, which was a disclaimer opinion because the audit was not completed. So we have not been able, so our basis for disclaimer was we have not been able to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence to provide a basis for an audit opinion on the financial statements of the aggregate discretely presented component units. And that term involves the Nome joint utility as well as the school district. The school district did get its own audit, but we report at the aggregate discretely presented component unit level, which includes NJUS. So we did not express an opinion on those financial statements. The next section is the discussion of an unmodified opinion. And this means there's no material errors that we are aware of within those financial statements. So in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, the aggregate remaining fund information, and the respective changes in financial position, cash flows thereof the year then ended. So for every other opinion unit, it's an unmodified opinion. Page 2.
Hey, Don.
My screen. Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on a second. We have a question here. So the question I've got is there's three subdivisions within the city of Nome.
Excuse me. Mayor has asked to be looked at.
Hold on just a second here. Good?
Yep.
So the question I have is we have 3 separate subdivisions within the city of Nome. The city, the schools, and the utilities. And just to clarify my understanding, you guys only audit the city, and then different CPA firms audit the schools and the utilities. Is that correct?
No, we audit the city, but we also audit the school district. It's just a separate audit. It's not included in the city audit, but we do the school district's own single audit, but we do not audit the utility.
Okay.
Other auditors do that one.
So normally because there's a separate auditing firm that audits the utilities, assuming you get the audit, you express an opinion on those financials, correct?
Yeah, based on whatever the audit opinion is on NJUS's separate audit, that's how we base our opinion. So if they got an unmodified opinion, then we put an unmodified opinion on that component unit.
Right. And this year, we did not, did you say that NJUS did not get their audit completed in time, and that's why you were unable to express an opinion on that?
That's correct.
Was it eventually completed? It just didn't meet your deadline for the audit?
To my knowledge, it is currently not completed.
Okay. And does the city and NJUS have the same fiscal year?
They do not. They're 12/31. So we use their 12/31/22 financial statements in the 6/30/23 financial statements of the city.
Okay, so their year end that you used for an auditing is actually older. I was thinking there might have been some timing issues if it was a different fiscal year end. So the audit for NJUS, the fiscal year ended 12/31/22 is still not complete?
To my knowledge, correct.
Okay, so as a result of that, the city's auditing firm cannot express any opinion on the NJUS financial statements, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right.
And just a quick follow-up on that, the previous year would have been December 31st for the utility audit report. Was that part of your audit report for the city for the FY 22?
Yeah, correct. It wasn't ready last year either, and so we disclaimed opinion on NJUS as well last year.
From an auditing firm's perspective, do you find that troubling?
Do I find that troubling? You know, there could be all sorts of issues. I don't really know the story behind it. Sometimes audits just get done late, and I would have to understand what the reasonings are behind it. But yeah, usually if you're not meeting your deadlines, there's some sort of issues involved.
If the same audit, and I don't mean to detract from your presentation today, but I brought this up last year, if the same auditing firm audits all of the city's units, including Nome Joint Utilities, would that prevent these kinds of issues from reoccurring?
Not necessarily. Like I said, it depends what the reasons were. If it falls down to maybe people quit at NJUS, so they didn't have the staffing to prepare for the audit, that's just something out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
That's just an example. I don't know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
BDO is the NJOS's auditor. Has BDO, I thought BDO had supplied some numbers to you, Don, but it wasn't.
I believe John gave us numbers to put in the financial statement. So there were unaudited numbers. I mean, I think they're still actually working on 21's audit. When we reached out to BDO, they said they were not engaged for the 22 audit yet. So it's my understanding that they hadn't even started it. But yeah, I think John gave me what he thought were fairly close to final numbers for NJUS, just so I could put something in your guys' financial statements. Otherwise, if we just left Nome Joint Utilities completely off, it would be an adverse opinion instead of a disclaimer of opinion.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. You can move on with your presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So now we're on page 2 of the audit report. So basis, disclaimer of opinion, and unmodified opinions. We conducted our audit in accordance with auditing standards and as well as government auditing standards. We are required to be independent of the city and the school district and Nome Joint Utility and maintain our independence throughout the audit process. The financial statements of NJUS have not been audited, and we were not engaged to audit them. Management's responsibility is they're responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements. They're also responsible for the design, implementation, maintenance of internal control relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements. So that is a big part of our audit process, is going through and testing the control of your major classes of transactions in order to determine and design the appropriate audit procedures for the city of Nome.
Can I interrupt you again?
Yep.
And I'm just looking at what the highlighted part on, it's on page 13 of the presentation, but we don't have current financials or current audits for NJUS. It sounds like you said that there might not even be done for 2021.
Yeah.
But yet highlighted here, sounds like you said that but here it's highlighted here that correct me, I just want to make sure I understand it, that NJUS's assets, net position, revenues are 84%, 93%, and 47% of the city of Nome. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That's just as just an observation. That seems like a very high percentage of what's comprised of the city of Nome financial statements that we really don't have any current information on.
Yeah, when you look at the city as a whole, the whole government, when you include NJUS, yes, that's a big portion of what represents their net position and revenues.
And you don't, again, and I'm not questioning the audit opinion, but you don't think that's a concern for the city of Nome that here we are having an unqualified opinion, but yet we're missing an overwhelming majority of the components of the city of Nome's financial picture.
So you don't do a single opinion. You do opinion on each component of the city. So the business type activities, the government type activities, the major funds, they all have separate opinions, as well as NJUS. It has its own opinion combined with the school district. And due to the large size of it, and so, we had to disclaim on the discretely presented component units. So that the 85%, 91%, and 44% of assets in that position and revenues, that's not the city as a whole. Sorry, I misspoke. That's just represents those amounts of the discretely presented component unit. So when you add NJUS together with the school district, that is the portion of assets, revenues, and expenses that or net position that make up that one column.
Right. So, great. Again, and I'm going to let you go on here in a minute, but so 84% of the city of Nome's assets are NJUS, correct?
No, of the discretely presented component unit. So that's the NJUS and that's the school district.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the clarification. You understand?
Yeah.
80, so just to further clarify that, the 84% is of, like, for instance, the assets are 84% of the school and the NGUs
Correct.
as a component, separate
Yeah,
component. City. Okay.
Correct, as a component.
Not
Yep.
of the entire city of Nome
Oh,
assets, but just of the discrete units.
yeah.
And Mark,
Yes.
this is John. I've joined from Anchorage in the airport, let me just give you a status on our stuff. As you are aware, we had a significant time delay before we were able to hire a qualified person to get back into our bookwork, and so progress has been made to get us up to current. And I'm actually, one of the things on my list while I'm here in Anchorage is to meet with our auditor to get things finalized for the very last part of 2021, which was simply an inventory account with a minor adjustment, and then we'll move back to on 22. That virtually closed at this point, and then we're going to be looking at getting 23 done.
Okay, so last.
With stuff here probably within 90 days or so.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is the last
Right.
audit report that was completed was 2020, and 2021 is getting close to be completed.
Yeah, well, the draft was submitted to the city auditors last year, but it was, the final thing was inventory adjustment, a minor thing. And then my focus has been on making sure that we paid our people, paid our bills, met our regulatory requirements. And now that we have help, we're going on to work on getting that final stuff. And as I said, I'm going to meet with the auditor tomorrow to get that finalized, and then get the 2022 and 2023 moving forward.
Okay, thanks for the update, John.
Thank you.
Any further questions on that, Scott? Okay, Don, if you want to carry on. Thank you.
Okay, auditor's responsibility, up the bottom of page 2. So our objective is to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement. Reasonable assurance is a high level insurance, but is not absolute insurance, and therefore is not a guarantee that an audit will always detect a material misstatement when it exists. The risk of not detecting a material misstatement resulting from fraud is higher than one resulting from error. Going on to page 3, because fraud involves collusion, forgery, intentional omissions, misrepresentations, and the override internal controls. So in performing an audit, we exercise professional judgment. We identify and assess the risks of material misstatements. We obtain an understanding of the internal controls relevant to the audit in order to design the audit procedures that are appropriate. We evaluate the appropriateness of the accounting policies and the reasonableness of accounting estimates. And we also evaluate if there are any conditions or events that raise substantial doubt about the ability to continue as a going concern for a reasonable period of time. We are required to communicate with the charge of governance, among other matters, any significant audit findings or any internal control related matters. The required supplementary information, which is behind your footnotes, and the management discussion analysis is behind the audit opinion. The budgetary comparison schedules, the schedules of the city's share of net pension and OPEB liabilities and assets and contributions. These are all, and the related notes to the required supplementary information. These are all what's considered RSI, required supplementary information. And we do not provide an opinion or provide any insurance on that information because of the limited procedures do not provide us with sufficient evidence to express an opinion or provide any insurance on the required supplementary information. The supplementary information we do place an opinion on. So on page 4, the very last sentence, in our opinion, based on our audit report, the supplementary information is fairly stated in all material respects, the statement as a whole. And because there's a single audit, we have to follow government auditing standards, which means we consider the city's internal controls over financial reporting and our test of its compliance with certain provisions, laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements. And there's a separate letter that relates to government auditing standards, which that letter is on page 72 of the audit report. And so this is the letter in accordance with government auditing standards. So in planning and performing our audit of the financial statements, we considered the internal controls over financial reporting for designing our audit procedures. And if there was any internal control issues that we found during the audit, they would be reported in the next section. The two different types that we would report, one is a material weakness, which is a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in internal control. So there's a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement of the entity's financial statements will not be prevented, detected, corrected on a timely basis. So if we had any material journal entries that we proposed to the city while completing the audit, then there's probably some sort of material weakness in internal controls that did not catch that error. A significant deficiency is just anything that we think the governing body needs to be aware of. And page 73, during the audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we considered to be material weaknesses. Report on compliance and other matters. This section is reserved for reporting any material non-compliance to the financial statements or any fraud or abuse. The last sentence of this paragraph reads, the results of our tests disclose no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government auditing standards. Page 74, this is the uniform guidance letter. This is the letter that we issue when we do a federal single audit, which means you guys spent more than $750,000 in federal funding for the year. So we have audited with the types of compliance requirements identified that could have a direct and material effect on major federal programs. Nome Public Schools had its separate audit. So the federal funding that the school spent is not included on your guys' Fed schedule. And they spent $3.3 million in federal funding. The last paragraph of this section is our audit opinion. It's an unmodified opinion, which means there's no material non-compliance that we are aware of within the compliance programs that we audited. So in our opinion, the city complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on the major federal programs. Basis for our opinion, we followed of course, auditing standards generally accepted. We followed government auditing standards. And because this is a federal single audit, we also followed the uniform guidance. Sorry, give me 1 second. When we do a federal single audit, we're also required to maintain our independence, just like we are with the financial statement audit. Management is responsible for the compliance requirements and for the design and implementation and maintenance of internal controls over compliance. So every major compliance program, we have to go through and test the controls surrounding that program. Our objective is to obtain, just like the financial statement audit, to obtain reasonable assurance about whether material non-compliance with the compliance requirements occurred. In performing an audit, we exercise professional judgment, identified and assessed the risk of material non-compliance, and obtain an understanding of the internal controls over compliance. And just like a financial statement audit, we're required to communicate any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that we identified for compliance purposes during the compliance audit. Material weakness and internal control over compliance on page 76 is defined very similar to the one of financial reporting. This is just a combination of deficiencies and internal control over compliance, such as there's a reasonable possibility that material non-compliance with the type of compliance requirement of a federal program will not be prevented, detected, corrected on a timely basis. And a significant deficiency, once again, is just anything that we want the governing body to be aware of. During the audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control over compliance that we considered to be material weaknesses. So there was no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses reported within these set of financial statements. Page 77, this is a summary of everything we talked about. So this is a good place to go look to see what was audited and to see what the opinions over the financial statements and compliance programs are. So the type of report audited over the financial statements was unmodified. There was no going concern issues. There were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. The non-compliance material in the financial statements noted. There was no non-compliance material in the financial statements. For federal awards, there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, and there was no findings of question costs. The two programs we audited was ALN number 15.226 and 21.027. The dollar threshold between A and B programs is $750,000. And you guys did not qualify as a low-risk auditee because of you had a late reporting finding last year. So that takes you out of the qualification of a low-risk auditee for at least one more year. Page 78, there was no current.
Sorry, could you explain that, what you just said about takes out of the no-risk audit? I didn't catch the last part of it.
So you guys are considered a high-risk auditee, and the reason is because you didn't get your federal single audit done in time in the previous year. So you'll be a high-risk auditee for this year and next year. What that means on the audit side is we audit 40% of your Fed schedule expenditures instead of 20%. So there's more audit work that needs to be completed.
So simply because we didn't get it completed in time, that kind of puts us in a different category?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Page 83, this is the summary schedule of prior audit findings. This is just that late reporting, non-compliance reporting finding. And as you can see, the status says the finding has been resolved because we're going to get this audit completed on time, which is March 31st. The next report is on page 79. This is your state single audit letter. And this letter reads very similar to the Fed letter. So the state has designed their compliance section just like the Feds did. The Nome Public Schools expenditures of state award was $10,130,000, which is not included in the state schedule because they had their own state single audit. And in our opinion, the city complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major state programs. So this is an unmodified opinion, which means there's no material non-compliance that we are aware of within the financial statements. So the remaining of the letter reads just like the Fed one. It talks about material weaknesses and significant deficiencies. During the compliance audit, we didn't find any material weaknesses that needed to be disclosed. The definition of the two terms are the same as I just went through over the federal single audit. And page 82, the state schedule of findings and question costs. This again just summarizes what we just talked about. The second section is the state financial assistance. There was no material weaknesses, significant deficiencies identified. It was an unmodified opinion over your state programs. And once again, the city of Nome is a high-risk auditee. And there were no findings that were reported. That is a summarized version of the audit. Are there any questions about the audit?
Does any of the council members have any further questions?
Is that the conclusion of your report, your audit report?
Yep.
Okay, so this question might be it's not about the specific audit, but it's kind of a general question. I assume that you audit a number of different municipalities throughout the state. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And I assume that most of those municipalities have different individual subdivisions like we have, utilities, broken down. The question is, do you find that in most, is it typically one auditing firm does all of those, or is it more common that you see different auditing firms looking at the various components of the city separately? And I guess the second part of that question is, is there any advantage or disadvantage to either structure?
It is common for one auditor to do all components of a municipality. That's pretty common. But I wouldn't say it's that uncommon for other auditors to do a piece of a component unit of a city either. But for the most part, I'm just thinking about the municipalities we do. Yeah, I think we do pretty much all aspects of the audit for most of the municipalities we do. Is there advantage to it? Not necessarily. The advantage may be due to scheduling, being able to make sure that the audits are getting scheduled timely. But when BDO does Nome Joint Utilities, essentially is all we do is take the report that they've issued and add that information into the financial statement. So as long as everything's done timely, I don't necessarily think there's a big advantage of using one firm. But yeah, to answer your question, for the most part, we do all aspects of a municipality when we do an audit.
Okay. And and I know I don't want to veer too much off the auditing trail here, but do we typically, in those municipalities that you have these multiple subdivisions, do you typically find that the finance group or the accounting functions of the city is typically consolidated under one umbrella or one group instead of having, essentially three separate accounting divisions, departments doing each separate subdivision? Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. A lot of times it's split up. There's three different accounting. If there's 3 units that you're auditing, a lot of times it's 3 totally separate units. So 3 totally separate systems. Smaller cities, yeah, it'll all be ran through one, but most of the time it is split up.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
I think I'll just bring up one that I usually bring up every year. It just kind of has to do with the health of the fund balance. And I think it's on your page 12 of your report or under the management discussion. And I know that the city has a policy of maintaining a unassigned fund balance in range of 10 to 50%. First of all, is that standard in the cities throughout Alaska as far as that range, or is that as far as a policy for unassigned fund balance?
The policy within the cities, it can vary quite a bit.
Yeah, but then we're at 49.95% as of June 30th, 2023. It says, compared to 67.62 at June 30th, 2022.
You're talking about the unassigned
Yes.
on page 12?
Yes.
Which you're looking at the general fund, it says a 60%, 60.8% compared to 65 in 2022. So it's actually going down.
It's gone down, but we're still above our policy threshold. Is the point of,
Well, the policy's pretty wide, 10
It
to
is a pretty wide.
50%.
yes. And that's why I was asking how that varies from city to city. We're still above our threshold of our policy.
We're above 10%.
No,
We're
above-
within above the top end.
Yes, right.
No, okay.
So as a whole, would you say the city's general fund balance unassigned is pretty healthy?
Yeah, it looks pretty healthy to me.
Okay, all right, that's the point I was trying to make, is that we're still within that healthiness of the unassigned.
But it is declining.
But it has
It
declined.
has declined.
Yeah.
And it's trended down primarily because tax revenues have not been sufficient to cover expenses, correct?
Correct.
No, because expenses have gone up as part of.
Sure,
Right.
absolutely.
Right, so.
Sorry, we're deviating off the
We're
audit.
deviating, Sorry, and I apologize, Don, I didn't have a chance to really dive through this till yesterday and this morning. But I just wanted you to look, and you don't have to look at it now, but if you go back, before you issue your final one, I think there's a typo on page 14. Under I think it doesn't affect this year, it's just a typo from last year for 2022 in the business type activity numbers, and if somebody could just rerun those numbers to, it's on the C-cell doc WG, I think, or to double check that.
Okay.
And also
On
construction.
page 14 of the audit, you said?
Yeah, 14 on the management discussion and analysis.
Uh-huh. And what are you looking at?
Looking at two things, C-cell doc WG for the 2022, and then also construction in progress on that line. Just to double check that, it looks like the C-cell doc might be supposed to be 1.7 million, and somebody actually typed in a 7 or something on the.
Okay.
And then on that bottom line, just to double check that entry there. I'm pretty sure it's just a typo, or it may not be even anything, but if you could double check it. Doesn't.
Okay.
So to put it in layman's terms, this is a great audit for the city of Nome.
Yeah. Yeah, the audit went well, for sure. Yeah, the City of Nome audit always goes pretty well. Nikki does a good job of getting everything ready. So yeah, good clean audit.
Outstanding, thank you.
Thank you again, Don.
You're welcome.
Anything else, city manager?
Well, you do have,
John, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I guess just a couple of things. One was before I didn't heard the whole thing, but there was a question on
John, you broke up.
You broke up there. Could you repeat that?
So 60 or 70 million, or maybe more. I don't remember the number right off the top of my head, which is the water and sewer system, power lines, and the power plants. And so that is the majority of them, and those assets have not changed materially. A few, 100,000 or maybe of different things that have been added in recent years, but the assets are being depreciated, so there's a reduction for year over year. So I guess those numbers, I feel very confident that they are correct, and that it's in plant as. How long have you, Don, been doing this?
I don't know. Don, how long have you been doing the city's audit?
You're on mute, Don.
You're on mute.
I'm gonna have to look. It's been a long time. Nikki, do you know how long it's been?
I want to say since 2008, but I'd have to confirm that.
Yeah.
You still there, John?
Hello?
Yeah, hey, John, I think we might have lost you there, but Don said that they think they've been doing it, or Nikki mentioned that he thought they had been doing it since 2008.
I think I should that.
I think we just need to move on. Is he driving?
He's at the airport, it sounds like, yeah.
Still there, John?
Sounds like the airport.
Is it really hard?
Yes, I am. Maybe I'm in the basement here as I'm going through. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you good now. Just the answer to your question was Nikki thought that since about 2008 that they've been doing the city audit.
Yeah, and I guess that question on the school audit, because I think they, every few years go and get new auditors potentially. And the city had looked at that too at one point in time, but didn't find another firm that was better than Dawn and Company. So just the point being that historically there have been other auditors involved in component units. So.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. And the asset thing, were there any more questions or comments on my comments?
No, I think it's just part of the management report questioning how much assets, what the percentages comprise of, basically, not necessarily breaking down into individual assets for each unit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. If there aren't any questions, thank you very much again, Don, for your presentation and for working with the city staff and getting this accomplished again.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you for having me.
Good.
Then you have your regular meeting. I don't want to forget that. This is the work session, then we have your regular
Okay.
meeting to accept the audit
All right, very good.
findings.
All right, thank you. All right, with that, I guess we'll conclude this work session and bring it back up at the regular meeting.
All right, you guys have a good day.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you all for coming.
No,
We got a meeting now.
Oh,
Right now.
That's why I'm looking at that. We have a meeting now.
We need a new acting mayor here.
I didn't have the agenda in front of me, I guess. I thought you meant we were moving back to the regular meeting.
Call the meeting order. Roll call.
Here, no, actually didn't have.
Yeah.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, I'd like to call a regular city council meeting together. It is 12:45 PM. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Martinson.
Here.
Councilmember Piscoya.
Here.
Councilmember Topcock.
Used.
Councilmember Miller.
Used.
Excuse. And Youth Representative Hanson. Excuse.
That's cool.
Okay, and we have a short agenda here with one item, resolution adopt the results of the fiscal year 23 Altman audit. Could I get an approval of the agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Roll call, please, on the
Who's
approval.
the second?
Adam.
Adam.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoya.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll open up for any citizens' comments. Are there any citizens that'd like to make comments? Okay, thank you. Now we have new business. Mr. Clerk, could you read the resolution, please?
Resolution 24-3-02, resolution adopting the results of the fiscal year 2023 Altman audit.
entertain a motion to pass this resolution.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just at least announce the employees that are involved, that have been involved in this.
Sure.
Obviously, Nikki Crow, Mimi Farley, Peter Lay, Walter Bell, and the clerk staff have also been involved, which would have been Brad and Jeremy. And I don't know if I'm missing anybody else. Nikki,
Yes, the port office is also a big help during audit prep.
so I just want to make sure that those are the folks who work overtime at this time of the year and put the budget, get all this done. So I want to make sure they're recognized.
And I'd also wanted to kind of echo the same thing, that Nikki's staff and her should be commended. Auditing is, it's a pretty important part of what we do, and I know they spend a lot of time and hours doing that. So I want to commend them for doing that. And once again, having a really good audit. So good job.
Thank you, Nikki and crew. Okay, if there's no further discussion, can we have a roll call, please, on the resolution?
Councilmember Piscoya,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yeah.
Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
Thank you, that's passed, and it is now 12:48. If there's anything else, then we'll adjourn the meeting.
Only 3 minutes later than I promised you guys.
Okay. Well, 3 minutes of me not knowing
Yeah,
what's
he
going
didn't know
on.
what the heck's going on, didn't he?